Hi, this is Lil reporting from Room 12. Today we have an author by the name of Ardith D. She's written several books about helping teachers and students become better at writing great answers. Come join us today for an interesting conversation with this interesting person. Welcome, Miss Cole. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you. I'm just so pleased that your teacher, Christina Lofbaum, wanted you to do this today with me. I think it's really exciting that I've got kids interviewing me for the website. So thanks a lot, all of you.
Let's start with our first question from Matt. Tell me something about yourself. Who are you?
Well, Matt, probably most of you know that I live in Port Townsend now. But I didn't always live in Port Townsend. I moved here a few years back from the state of New York, and that's where I did 30 years of teaching. I was 21 years in the classroom. I was a literacy coach for 9 years. I taught at the university just after school, the University of Buffalo, and I also consulted for a lot of schools around there. So I did a lot of stuff with teachers and kids for a long time. And now this is kind of payback time because it's time for me to give some of what I've gotten from teachers and kids. So that's why I've been writing books, what I've learned in the 30 years. And one of those things was about better answers.
Thanks, Matt. Let's turn to Riley.
I was wondering, why did you write the book Better Answers?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because I think that's one of the most important things about Better Answers. I wrote it because the kids I was working with when I was a reading coach were suddenly having a lot of trouble on the state assessment because the state had moved from multiple choice bubble-in answers to what they called constructed response, or they had to write the answers out. And our kids were really quite good at writer's workshop and writing all kinds of genres. But what happened when they got to the test is that they wrote in the wrong way, and then they knew they were writing in the wrong way, and it knocked them off kilter, and they had a hard time, et cetera, and that was happening to kids all across New York State. So I just worked really hard with the kids for a year to try to figure out how I could get them just focused on responding to a prompt, responding to a question or a petition, and out of that came Better Answers. And you know about it because you told me you read the whole book. Well, guess what? Actually, a third grader told me one time. He was taking me from one classroom to the next when I was visiting the school. He was from Rochester, New York. He also had read the book and just about knocked my socks off when he turned to me and said, "You know, I read your book." It always astounds me that kids can read the book and get something out of it. So what did you think? Did you like it? Did it work for you?
I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed reading it. And I really liked how you retold the story, like the Little Red Riding Hood and like Three Little Pigs. I liked reading those too. I thought the answer sandwich was really interesting, how you came up with it. So when did you start writing?
That's a hard question. When did I start writing? You know, I think I started writing because around 1979 or 1980, Don Graves started writing books about writing, and then people like Lucy Calkins, who were also from New York, all of them began speaking about it, and it enticed me. I loved what they were saying, and so I started doing writing workshop with my kids, and you can't very well teach anybody to write unless you write yourself. So I started out with that, and then eventually by the mid-90s, I began getting invitations because I did a lot of speaking, and I began getting invitations from like editors of publishing companies would be there, and they came up and said, why don't you write a book? And so I did. I wrote a book in 1995, I think was the first one. And then I continued after, but I've had a lot more time. After I retired, I had a lot more time.
How do you know what to put in the book, in the pages, and how to make it sound so wonderful and great?
A short answer would be that the kids and I worked really hard on all of these different aspects of constructing a response. And the very first thing that I figured out was that most of the kids weren't answering the question. The kids who were having trouble, most of them weren't answering the question that was presented to them. They'd get off and they wouldn't answer the question. So I thought, well, the way to keep them on is just restate the question. And then I was listening to the radio and I heard Ira Flato interviewing famous scientists, and those famous scientists actually did that. They restated the question. And so I thought, then I felt better. And after I felt better, then and the kids, with the kids helping, they got excited because they felt like they were doing better. And so with that excitement and so forth, it was working, and the kids did better. And then Buffalo City Schools asked me if I would come in and help them. And as I was helping them, I thought, you know what? I was writing another book at the time. I was writing Knee to Knee, Eye to Eye. I stopped writing Knee to Knee, Eye to Eye. I said, I've got to do this first. And so I did. I sat down and I wrote it. And I wrote that book perhaps the fastest of any book that I ever wrote from beginning to end. Of course, it's all the editing.
This is the end of part 1. Look forward to part 2.
Reduce the use of resources, reuse resources, and recycle resources. Reduce, reuse, recycle!
Did you know people in the United States throw away about 229 million tons of garbage each year? That's an average of 4.5 pounds of garbage each person each day.
Buy products in bulk. Buy larger sizes of things. Buy products that don't have unnecessary packaging.
Reduce, reuse, recycle!